think everyone's already here. So yeah, welcome to Memes with the Spar on 22 March. With the motion as stated, I think we can start the debate calling upon Prime Minister. Here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Right. This is OG. My pronouns are he, him, and my POI preferences through the mic. I will not be reading the chat. Let me set up my timer. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels. Government as a body of power and as a figure of power of the country, right? The responsibility to help and take care of each and every one of people within the country, right? But when all that fails, when they somehow make some sort of mistake that could affect every single person within society, we say that they ought to take accountability and ensure that, hey, this problem gets fixed. Am I right? Now, the main actors within this debate, allow me to characterize, is one, the major opposition party, because they're directly, obviously, because they're the major opposition party, we are going to directly be opposing the government within their ideals, within their policy. And we would also take the aggressive stand because we believe that change wouldn't be made unless we make it clear what we want, we make it clear what the problems within society is and what government needs to fix. Next is the ruling government. Even though no government within the society is perfect, they at the very least should be able to take accountability whether or not the problem is big or small. We believe that they, as a government, should be able to take accountability for the problems because it directly affects the people, right? To be responsible enough to fix their mistakes. And also, the vulnerable actor within this debate is obviously the citizen, because each and every move, action, and policies that are being made directly affects these citizens and how they live and how they do their job. Now, what does the current status quo look like, right? The country that when the current status quo is running on is a country that runs on democracy, and democracy is obviously based on the people's voice, the people's thoughts and everything, meaning that there's a direct disadvantage for people whose voices don't get heard at all, because acknowledge that within democracy, how you have to ensure that each and every one's voices are heard, and when these voices aren't heard, this directly contradicts with the whole point of democracy. Hence why we as a ruling government, the major opposition party, would like to take an aggressive stance to fight this, to be able to ensure that the problem with the current status quo is being fixed. Why is the current status quo not enough or bad? It's not enough because it's no democracy if people don't get equal say. When people don't get equal say, that leads to inequality and obviously creates a whole lot of problems such as segregation and etc. Opposition side cannot say that status quo is enough because we live in because it is completely contradicting to say that we live in a democratic country full of people who work for the government, but some people just don't have the same clarity as someone who's from the higher ups, let's say. Now, let me clear some of what opposition sides worried might be on how they might think that confrontational approach would instill fear in people. We say that is exactly what we want, because fear pushes for change and it makes people wake up, makes people realize what the problems at hand is and what we need to fix to ensure that the current society that we live in gets fixed. And even if we scare away people, that's okay because our message stands, and the current problem that the government needs to fix and the entire issue that they have, that message would still get across. Now, our goal within this debate is not to oppose democracy, but rather fix the problem within democracy. It's to fix the holes within the government that they have made, to make sure that everything is right and set the record straight to the people. We want the government to take accountability for those mistakes. Now, secondly, opposition side might say how a peaceful approach would be better, right? But let's be real here. There's been many peaceful movements in the past, but we say that doesn't work. And even though you can send a message through like peaceful protests, let's say, but changes still wouldn't happen if the governments don't just understand. Like, if you don't make it clear what the problem is for the government to fix, right? Let's look at the Stonewall riots. Let's say before the Stonewall riots, gay people couldn't even couldn't even have a voice. But because of this riot that caused like damage, the government finally listened because people are making it clear what they want and what the government needs to fix. Now, moving on to before moving on to my contributions, are there any POI? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Now, so that means they agree, right? Basically. Now, my first argument on justification, we say that I'll divide this argument under 2 layers. First of all, the role of the government. Now, like I've previously said before, it is the government's role to serve the people, to ensure that they lay down every single foundation that they need for the people to be able to take care of themselves, right? To be able to work, to be able to eat, to be able to live within a society that can help, that can serve them. But we say that when the government has failed to fulfill, like, let's say, like a certain problem, we said that government deserves to be able to, they're obligated to, at the very least, take accountability for what that problem is. Now, but moving on to my second layer on the effect of society. We said that confrontational approach would actually warn society, make people aware of the mistakes of the government, and make it clear what they need to strive to change and to fight for change. Problems wouldn't be solved if we just don't know what the problem is. Hence why we are very proud to propose. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Prime Minister. Now let's call upon the leader of opposition to get it.
Okay, thank you. I have no gender pronouns and I prefer my POI through the chat box. And I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. We agree with the opening government that the government has has the obligation to serve and take care of the people. But please remember that there is no bill that are perfect. There will be always something to be criticized of. But by criticizing in an aggressive approach, it will just hinder the work of the ruling party. And of course, it absolutely will hinder the progress of the country. Democracy itself is a system for the people, of course. If the opposition party takes or express their criticism in a highly aggressive or even a violent, as some would say, there will be no stability in the country political environment. Fear doesn't create stability. It will just create instability. It will just change the system from democracy into an anarchy. And the status quo is changes are taking place without the opposition party putting their effort into a more aggressive manner. The government or the ruling party, of course, will hear the criticism. And secondly, please remember that democracy has a voting system. So the bills that are passed are the voices of the people's majority. Not all people will be equally get what they want, but all people will get an equal voting power. But please remember that democracy voting system is allowing only the bills that the majority of people chooses. And secondly, we are civilized being living in a civilized society. Putting this aggressive manner, confronting every government-backed bills isn't that rational. If the government the bills are all right, just because there are government-backed doesn't mean you have to criticize it. And for the case study, we can see at the COVID bills or COVID approaches taken by the USA government in the 2020. There are a lot of bad sides about the bills and government that the people have to wear masks, that have to vaccine. Of course, there are a segment of people that doesn't agree with that. They say that their choice, and they have the equal power to say that. But by them taking an aggressive approach, creating a political turmoil, it doesn't move the country into a more COVID-free state. It just hinder the government progress, and that's why we oppose the choice that the House will support that the aggressive the opposition party, the major opposition party, will take aggressive approach to criticize the government, and that's why we brought to oppose.
Okay, thank you, Leader of Opposition. Now let's call upon the Deputy Prime Minister.
I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. So sorry for that.
Okay. If anyone else wants to go to the bathroom, you can do it now so that we can start later.
Oh no.
Kairan, maybe you can mute OG.
Okay, I'm back. I'm audible.
Oh yeah, you're audible, right?
Please, really sorry for the inconvenience. POI preference at the 4th to 5th minute mark. I'll be willing to take one from the closing bench. If there's none, I'll be taking one from the opening. And you can just address me as the DPM of this debate. Okay, I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Notice that this is an entirely actor debate, and yet we have zero analysis coming from the opposition side, from the OO, on how then they can firstly cater to the interest of the entire opposition party in a functioning democracy, but secondly, what is even their mechanism to achieve the same goal, right? Because if the only thing that they are going to tell you in this debate is on the tangible harm that they never even provided an access to, then don't mind that because we are not going to hear it, right? So then moving on to my responses, right? Firstly, I will told you that, there is no perfect government, and in a democracy country with the majority votes wins, right? Few responses for this. Firstly, we get it that there's no perfect government or there's no good government, right? But what we want is the lesser evil in this debate, and we will be able to achieve that by then, by taking an aggressively confrontational approach. And notice that we are playing as the actor of a opposition party in a functioning democracy. So other than the interest of this opposition party, we do not care about anything else. But secondly, yes, we get it that in a democratic country, the majority vote wins. But what happens to the other? But we, as the opposition party, will then have more incentive to cater to even the minority, because because our one goal is to then surpass the ruling party in the status quo right now, right? Hence, to do so, we will try to cater to those who are not being represented by the current ruling party and their policies. Hence why we are able to then win the overall votes in this scenario. But second response, right? Second rebuttals, right? I will tell you again that if we were to aggressively confront this entire ruling party whatsoever, it will hinder their work and the progress of the country will be slower down at the end of the day. Few responses for this as well. Firstly, how will this hinder the work of the ruling party, right? Because if we were to go by the context of a political world, then it is a world where people are literally up against each other noses constantly, right? If under side opposition, they try to vote for an entirely utopic country, an entirely utopic political world where everyone is buddy with each other with zero competition whatsoever, and they still have zero incentive to do better because of that lack of competition, then be my guest, you're going to be the one who will bring this entire country to the doom, right? But secondly, they told you about how this will hinder the entire progress of the country, right? A few responses to this as well. Firstly, if this mere confrontation will literally hinder the capabilities for the ruling party to govern the entire country, then that should speak to you enough that they simply never had the capabilities to lead a country in the very first place, right? Simply a small confrontation, and suddenly they will be shaking on their boots and won't be able to govern a country. We don't need a government like that. Hence why we fought for the opposing party in this scenario, right? So then moving on to my extension, it is within our responsibility to, as the opposing party, to cater towards the people and our country, right? And it is only right for us to then explicitly point out a fault in the ruling party's jurisdiction that has a potential to harm everyone in this scenario, right? The moment that we are able to show our dedication to the citizens that we are willing to point out the faulty policies that are being released by the ruling party whatsoever, and especially in the context of a democratic country, then we will then have a higher chance to win the votes on the next voting session, right? Hence why this also align with the opposing party's interest, and we are so proud to propose. Moving on to my contribution then. Firstly, how we can achieve better legitimacy in terms of political party, right? Intense tension has already long existed in the political world, where one is trying to suppress the others and try to rule over the entire country, right? And they have done so many things to achieve their goal, where some are good and some can be considered morally bad. Under OG, when you aggressively confront the ruling party, then the moment that this ruling party try to do something that can potentially risk the country and the citizens' welfare, you as the opposing party will immediately point them out and aggressively point out on what they are lacking in, as well as the entire harm that can potentially comes in the future, right? Which will then pursue you further and pursue the citizens further that we as the opposing party are we are very persistent in trying to keep our country safe and our citizens safe, to the point where we are even willing to go against the current ruling party simply because they try to risk our citizens' welfare, right? You will be able to gain the sympathy and the favor of the citizens at the end of the day through that entire mechanism, right? But even if opposition say that this will create instability to the political whatsoever, firstly, we receive no analysis on why then this can even happen in the very first place and why even this is harmful, right? But secondly, if you consider broad and honest confrontation as a quote-unquote a threat to the stability of the political world, then what does this say about the political world and the opposition, right? Lies are everywhere and nobody dares to confront it, right? The society and the citizens will only be ruled by a lying government that can never try to be honest with their citizens simply under the reason that they are scared for the stability of the country, right? Overall nonsensical. But lastly, right, even if it creates a source of instability, it proves to you further that the power of the ruling government and their capabilities are simply insignificant, and this will also help in swaying the citizens in voting for the opposing party in the next round, right? For proposition as well. But comparatively under opposition, right, what will happen? Firstly, they will then the opposing party under their side of the house has zero power or zero incentive at all to then be able to get the votes from the citizens, because they never really give you any mechanism on how then they will be able to act and help the opposing party in this debate. It also proves to society that you as the opposing party on the side government are willing to act out of quote-unquote professionalism in order to provide a better good for the country, and we are able to then gain the favor from the other citizens of our country. Before moving on, is there any POIs? 1, 2, 3. Moving on, then, second contribution, how this will affect our reputation, right? Even if in the worst case scenario, we are criticized by some part of the public for being too straightforward, firstly, you are still going to be criticized nonetheless because you are a political party and a government, right? Instead, it will be much, much worse under opposition when you are being criticized for your lack of transparency and for your lacking capabilities in terms of governing the country, right? For example, you release a policy and yet it only caters to the small amount of majority, and even the minority are being harmed in the situation, right? What can you do about it? Because again, by going by OO's entire word, democracy only rules on the metrics of the majority wins, right? So then minority will only be left out under the rest of the house. But third contribution then, right? How can we change the political party at the end of the day, and how can we play in the interest of the opposing party, right? Concluding the entire debate, what have we told you so far? Firstly, we told you that the political party is so backstabbing, etc., that there needs a check and balance status quo right now, and the only that is able to then check and balance the ruling party is the opposing party, right? Because again, it's under the context of democratic. So how can the citizens even complain when they are the ones who chose the ruling party themselves, right? But secondly, we provide more transparency in the political world, hence why we are able to then gain more favor from the citizens. And even if we are being tainted, our reputation is being criticized whatsoever, we can still at the very least mitigate that when we are able to help more people, and the citizens will come to us, love us more, right? Comparatively under OO, citizens will only hate you more for your failure, and we are so proud to propose. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now the call upon the deputy leader of opposition, Seger.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, for the POI preferences, just open your mic. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judge, what actually happened in the debate right now is that the government only focused more about how it's actually going to impact the democracy, about how it's actually going to make the voice for the powerless to be heard by the current government, right? But they totally forgot about what is actually the main interest of the political party itself. we agree that the political party is actually having an interest to get more followers, right? To actually get more voters, so they are going to be elected in the next election, right? So that is actually they are going to try to do any solution in order to improve their voter and followers, right? So that is actually have been forgotten by the government, right? Because they only focus more about how it is going to be improve the democracy without thinking how it is actually going to affect the credibility, how it is actually going to impact the images of the political party itself, right? And that is why in here we are going to try to oppose what has been spoken by the government. First thing that I'm going to bring to you is about the characterization of the political party. We believe that, and also we agree that the main interest of the political party is actually to get more followers, right? To actually get more voters so they're going to be elected in the next election, right? So that is actually the main interest of the political party. And second, what is actually happening in the current status right now is that the current party is already doing their job properly. By how? By doing a campaign, by criticizing with a rational thinking, right? Not by harshly criticizing the current government, because it is only going to lead you to the impact that I'm going to explain further in my argument, right? And also, what is actually the solution that we are going to try to offer to you is that we are going to just going to back to the regular way to look for the new voter and new followers by what? By how? By, of course, doing a campaign, and also by trying to looking for someone looking for the citizen interest or to the political party, right? By how? By doing a campaign, and also by hearing the voice of them and not trying to criticize harshly to the current government, because it is only going to lead you something bad. How it is actually going to lead you to something bad? Imagine if the current political party that is ruling the current government is actually having so many followers, is actually having a major voices of the nation, right? What will happen if this kind of a major opposition political party is trying to criticize harshly without thinking rationally? Of course, it's only going to make you more haters and also more more jokes, because of what? Because there are actually a major because the current ruling political party is having many followers, is actually having the major followers, right? And that's why it's only going to lead to you to the bad images of your political party itself, right? You cannot be elected in the future. No, thank you. You cannot be re-elected in the next election because of what? Because you're losing more followers. You're losing more voters. Because of what? Because you are just creating new haters by criticizing harshly to the current government, right? And that's why it's only going to create more potential and risking yourself because the fact that it's only going to make you more voter. And four things that I'm going to bring is the first one is the urgency, the effectivity, and also the justification and also the impact. The urgency. First of all, it is an urgent because of what? Because we are actually progressing by having a regular way to look for voters, right? Because by doing what? By doing a campaign, and also by trying to not trying to criticize harshly, because it is only going to create more haters in the future, right? And also the current way is already suitable because of what? Try to touch the citizen heart and try to not creating more haters, and also but at the same time we are still able to create more followers because of the fact that we are not harshly and not irrationally criticize the current government, right? And that is why in here it is not urgent. Second, why is it effective in order to reach our goal? No, thank you. Why is it effective to reach our goal? Because the fact that it is in here we can effectively improve our followers because of the fact that we are not risking ourselves by creating more haters, by harshly criticizing current government, and also we are still able to improve our followers because we are still doing a regular campaign in the future, right? And also, if we are able to take a look, and if we can still criticize and be the powerless because of what? Because of course, when the government actually did something wrong, when the government actually did some mistake, of course, this kind of opposition party are able to criticize, but of course, with a rational way, not by harshly criticizing, because it's only going to lead to you to irrational criticize. That's only going to make you into bad images and etc. And that is why here we agree by having the current focus product that's running, by having a regular campaign, not criticizing harshly, it is actually the most effective way in order to achieve our goal, and that is to get the elected in the future. In the election, the fact that we are improving more followers, right? And that is why we think it is more effective in order to achieve our goals. Yes. No?
Point of clarification, the mechanism only came late during the LO speech, right?
Okay, I'll talk about that later. Okay, second about the justification that I'm going to bring is that why it is justified. Of course, because of the goal of the political party is to actually get more followers, right? Not risking ourselves by not rationally criticizing ourselves, because harshly criticizing can actually lead to irrational and also blunder, and actually can be a material for all of the current followers ruling party to actually hate the opposition, and that's why in here it is not going to be able to achieve our goal, right? And how this also can be still the voice of the powerless that the government actually worry about is that because the fact that whenever the government actually do something wrong, of course most people are going to comment, most people are actually going to criticize, and of course it is actually the way for the powerless people to get hurt by the current government, because this kind of political party still can criticize, but in the rational way, right? And also, what is actually going to be the impact benefit that we're going to get? Of course, we are going to get more followers. It is actually very beneficial for the opposing party to get more followers, because the fact that we are focusing more on how we are going to be elected in the future. And also, it can be still the power for the powerless people to deliver their voice without putting into risk of losing any followers, right? Because we are not risking ourselves by making some irrational criticize, because we harshly criticize the government, and also about how OG is actually going to putting them into harm, because the fact that how when they harshly criticize is actually can lead them to irrational critique, because the fact if we keep criticizing harshly, even though the government is not doing any mistake, of course it is only going to make the images of the this opposing political party going to be bad and not going to be like that in the future, because they are losing more followers and further. And also it can lead forward. And that's why in here we totally disagree with the fact that we have to harshly criticize, because we only focus more about how to create more followers, how to get more followers in this lesson. And that's why in here we are proud to oppose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dale, for that speech. That closed the opening debate. Now to open the closing debate, we call upon the member of government. You may start your speech.
Before that, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Pronounce she, her, and pre-PI will just unmute yourself, but I will most likely take the PI after my first extension, so bear with me. I'm going to set my timer first. Okay, going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, everyone in the opening government take it for granted that they fail to prove how the benefits can happen or the simple mechanizations. All arguments and mechanism in opening governments are logically prior to our case, we clearly value higher than open government. The opposition is being delusional that without being aggressive, they can reach more voters and allies to be heard, so they are already lose from the get-go. Okay, our stand is clear that as a major opposition country, we will take an aggressive confrontational approach, extremely proud to propose. Contribute a few points of responsibility before any of my extensions. Opposition claims a few things, and we can easily state this claim. A, government isn't perfect, so criticizing the government will be hinder its development. There will be no stability in the countries. Actually, other than the fact that the motion states as a democratic country, it's not only about voting. Democracy still stands after your vote, like your ability and rights to have demos and disagreement about the government, have more movements and programs. That's Indonesia, Musyawarah, quote unquote, like that, and such like that. Yes, we agree the movement isn't perfect. Therefore, we as citizens should be the ones to help and lead and assist the government into a better place. Opposition needs to realize criticism will exist in either side of the house. So it's symmetrical. Realistically, the existence of an opposing party will always exist, and it's just now their choice to be aggressive, confront, or criticize, or calmly oppose. Right off the bat, the opposing opposition have the wrong stance because they're advocating for the banishment of opposing party as a whole, while ruining the essence of democracy. Well, them not executing it right. What is their solution panel? It wasn't made clear by any of the opening team. B, just because the government back bill doesn't have to criticize it. Actually, if you're in an opposing party and you have the intention to actively oppose it, yes, you actually should and can criticize and go against it, because the government were voted by a party, right? And by the motion, it's probably voted by the majority party, which are the one the opposing party is opposing. So of course, the government will have the incentive to pass and back bills and policies that are aligned with the majority party or the ruling party, and this always will continue and happen. If the opposing party stays quiet and not iconic, the government will just continue to ignore the opposing party. In this scenario, following the opening opposition team's motion, the world that OO is living is one-sided, non-democratic countries. Few points that we'll bring is firstly what OG failed to bring is why it's actually morally legitimate and safe to do, and the mechanization that they lack to give us here. Okay, why is this motion actually morally legitimate? First of all, as the majority opposition, as a major opposition party, what is the incentive is to create a equal law for society and be listened by the government. The capacity, they do have the capacity because they are in a functioning democracy in the first place. Okay, panel. In order to have a party like be functioning in society, they need to have like criticism because they are the ruling party, which means they have power, and in order to be heard by people in power, we need to make it aggressive. Let me wrap way. We're shifting the overton windows here, panel. We don't want to be like to be aggressive, but we want to do it aggressive, but in order to us to reach a decent impact, the bargain, first you go low ball, you ask for aggressive approach, you disincentivize the people, you normalize the aggressive approach, but after that, people just settle down, right? And why do we want to do this, secondly? Because the motion is stated that we are in a democratic country with functioning democracy being held, so everyone should and could have voice in anything, but these major opposing parties just justify doing like aggressive confrontation because of the existence of overturned windows. And it's justified for them to do this because there are people with power and they don't have like much voice in here situation. So the only way to actually be heard is through aggressive confrontation to reach the overturned windows impact. The specificity here is that we have the guarantee of decent impacts on our side of the house because it's happened and will give impact. And for that, I'll take one PI performance. 1, 2, 3, no engagement, continuing. Secondly, let's see what both will happen in the scenario, right, panel? Okay, sorry. Okay, why is it counterproductive in oppositions in the first place, right? Because without like this certain like aggressive approach, it's going to be hard to be heard in general by these certain like ruling party, right? Because they're not people. These like major opposing it's not like people who rule the country, right? They don't have much to say. So of course, in order to them to actually be heard and to actually show is to clearly do it indirect. Secondly, the reason why we want to go aggressive because we can because the current approach is not enough. This is the first thing. That's why we want to go aggressive because if it's already enough, we won't have like this certain incentive or the certain mindset to actually do aggressive because if it's enough, we won't have any other problem. But the problem is it is not enough. That's why we want to go aggressive. Thirdly, is that certain like major opposition will feel like pity in their side of the heart. For example, like an activist fatigue when an activist doesn't get the impacts they want. The same, no, thank you. The same goes like with major opposing party here. We can lose them. In order to keep them, we need to go aggressive action here because the opposition, like opening opposition, kept bringing, oh, we will get more followers, we will get like more allies, we will get more votes. But if we don't go aggressive, we don't get the impacts. These certain like major opposing country party will just like stop to try. They don't get the impact, and they're tired and not be heard by these certain like ruling party in the first place, right, panel? And what do what will happen in our proposition, right? By doing aggressive, it will reach like more it will have like more in the first place. We're trying to create some sort of barbecue argument here because when we do aggressive, we attract people attention, we attract the majority of people even in the country, right? And when people knows about it, people will talk about it, and discussion will only happen in our side of the house because in opposition, the discussion very less likely to happen because they're not doing aggressive. It's going to be just calm and they're not doing anything about it. So the voice are not going to be heard and discussion won't happen. When in this scenario, discussion is the thing that we need to happen in order to reach the impact that we want here in this scenario. When impacts will be created, it only be created in our side of the house. The likelihood is higher in our side of the house. Okay, let's do a little bit of weighing here, panel. We in the government have a better intensity of impact here, panel. See how we do aggressive because we want to get a decent impact, not because we want to make it aggressive in the first place, panel. We have more likelihood for change and to reach a decent impact in our side of the house. The lack of intensity and how like these take like a major opposing party that will just exist in opposition side will already make them lose in this debate from the get-go, right? So it really want for like these certain like democracy like environment, you need to make it aggressive in order for you to be heard, for you to get decent impacts that you want, and it can only happen in our side of the house. And for all those reasons, we're very much proud to actually propose this motion. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now let's call upon the member of opposition. Is he out here?
Yes.
Okay, you can start.
My POI preference in the chat box, and I would like to start my speech in 3, 2, Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we think that we understand that our goals is clear, that we want to that we want the change of this opposition party to get heard, right, and be considered in the parliament, right? However, we think that we don't need to get to the extent where being aggressive is the only way, because why, ladies and gentlemen, we think that it's just another unhealthy competition for both opposition party or the ruling party. And you know what will happen if we use that unhealthy competition? It will only create chaos, ladies and gentlemen. Unlike the government bench that keep on saying that the only way to give the change for the opposition party is by being aggressively, well, we think that it's not chance, because as much as we want to be heard, just like the ruling part, just our opposition party, then the ruling party also have the chance to give their uh, opinion and their own system, right? We think that there is still other mechanism on how to for us to have a change in a parliamentary. First of all, in democracy, we have been conducting voting, right? The government has already made a policy based on a society needs by creating survey or say that, and we think that's enough. If the opposition party has anything better in mind to be floored, then we just need to go with the discussion, just like the status quo right now. Because why? You know, we live in a democratic country, ladies and gentlemen, where one of the major points of being democracy is that we need to give everyone a chance for their voice, right? Well, we know being aggressive is to the extent you are making a chaos, like the government said, it would only banish the image of parliament, the government of the country, as the one who leads the society. How could you give society that kind of example, like being aggressive? This is on the way. Like, cannot you think of a better idea and keep your manners and dignity, right? Because being aggressive is not a right manner for us to do that, because in the first place, that we think the government didn't give us a clear defined definition on how this aggressive is like, later, man. Well, just like the government said, being aggressive is to so that our point, to make it clear to the ruling party so that we can be heard. Yes, we understand that we may be a minority, we might be a last member comparing to the ruling party, but instead we think that having to get to the floor, that discussion with the ruling party, it is enough. And we think that if you have if we really think that we have any better idea option of the system of the country, then we just need to floor it and move how can we make our idea is better than the ruling party. Then that's how the intelligent people get their system heard, right, Simon? And we think that being aggressive is not a good idea, since it only make chaos for the not only for the parliament between as you as the government. Imagine you are being chaos while you are head of the society. How could you do that, ladies and gentlemen? And why we think that is it only make things worse for us if we are being aggressive? Yes, we will prove to you why being the aggressive is will only make things worse. And to the point, we really need to think twice thoroughly before acting hard with your action. First thing first, as an opposition party, this simply creates a gap and makes it even hard to get support from the other party. Because why? Because in the very first beginning, from the opposition party has already lost by the ruling party, right? By saying you really want to be aggressive into the action, then you just like trying to fight with the opponents that aren't even your average, because we know we already minority and we already less compared to the ruling party. Therefore, in this case, the only thing for us as an opposition party, knowing our power and a capability in the motion, we just need to stay humble while also proposing genuinely brilliant idea that might be accepted by the ruling party. Proof to the ruling party why is it better our system to be heard, just like that. Because as much as the opposition party and ruling party have different opinions in the for ruling country, we both know exactly what we want to do is the best for our country, right? How could you make a bad decision when you just act harshly and aggressive for being the head of the society? How could you? Yeah. And the government side of the house think that the only way that our chant to be heard and point out to the ruling party is aggressive. They think that that is the only way our opposition party will work in the end. However, we think that when we need to take things into consideration, then you also need to consider your action, considering the effect of your action. And we think that being aggressive is never a good choice. I mean, if there is a much better way instead of creating hate on each other, why do we have to choose being on a bad term on everyone, just like the government side? Because when you get aggressively, it means that you attract hate from the other party, right? Because as much as we want our chance to get heard, other people might have other better ideas. If you really have better ideas, then you just need to prove to them, right? Therefore, we think that being aggressive is not a best option, ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
How can you advance as a political party by acting humble when it is the opposite in the political world, right?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, what we mean by humble, this is not about dragging down your opinion or give up on your system. We are not saying like that, but we think that when you humble it like this, we mean to taking in discussion with the ruling party, just like our first characteristic of being a democracy, right? Therefore, when you have a discussion with the other party, then you need to what we mean is being humble is discussion and then prove to them why we give the country best if you take our side and so on like that. Because because we know that the ruling party is in the end that the one who will decide, or maybe decide because that they are in the first place the ruling party. But we think that they too want the best for the country, right? And therefore, you are as a opposition party, you are in the parliamentary. It's not without a reason, right? It's because you are capable to work together with the ruling country for the ruling party, right? And therefore, we think that being aggressive is not a bad choice and only create chaos in the both parliament or for society. Therefore, we would like to oppose the motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. To close up the government bench, we call on the government with.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
All right, pronouns are she, her. Preferred POI method will just be to unmute yourself. All right. So hold on, let me just set up my headset and my timer real quick. All right. Let me start my, sorry. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, all right. Let's start off this debate or my speech by recapping what happened. First, few reasons why I don't like opening government. They present the unexplained one-liner assumptive argument of wanting to do aggressive confrontation with reasoning that's supposed to back up their point, and anti-quote, we need to make it clear. They did not explain how aggressively confronting is exclusively making it clear. Second thing, then the other reason why they want to do this is because they live in a democratic country. Panel realize how they're not explaining the realistic things that will happen when they do this, nor the comparative of the impacts that will happen when you do this confrontational aggressive actions. Panel, OG is being very vague in this debate, but we as CG will set the record straight and lead this debate back in its direction where it's supposed to go. But second thing, what did OO did wrong? Few reasons why we don't like OO is they present this argument that that is pitying the government and acting as if the existence of the opposing party advocating for what they believe in is hindering the country's development. But also they try to rebut OG's case with the statement that democracy stops at voting. This is also at fault as the OG, since they did fail to explain democracy explicitly and why it's so important in this debate and on the side of their defending. So let me just clarify and get this straight, that democracy doesn't only only stop at voting, but democracy is also you being able to live your life 24/7 all day every day, having and advocating for your different opinion aggressively nor calm, whatever you do, whatever choice you want to. Lastly, OO is absolutely ignoring the main actor we are trying to support here, which is in this case the opposing party. We think that this debate should have went on a route on focusing on the problem here, which is allowing the opposing party live and advocate in what they believe in, whether they want to be aggressive or not. That's what we should be debating about, panel. The stance that OO bring is completely wrong. But we, as the proposition team, the closing government, we're very proud to advocate for the aggressive confrontation. Okay, first of all, I would like to move on with my clashes and rebuttals. First, my independent rebuttals. Okay, CO should be kicked out of this debate for no engagement with the government cases and no mechanization of their counter narrative. Okay, they said that it's just a matter of healthy competition for both opposition party or ruling party. The thing is, and they said that it will create chaos and kept bringing up chaos and whatever. But I have said that we want to do this because of the overturned windows here, panel. This is the exclusivity that we as aggressive advocators in the government side have. Well, the ones that have been explained by CG especially. But we are aggressive enough not to get the aggressive impacts that they want, because obviously that's not going to happen. But to get the decent impacts here, panel. For example, let me picturize this for you guys. Okay, so let's say I am like I'm an opposing party advocating for like everything to change as the opposing party, like everything should change into the opposing party. Obviously, that's not going to happen because A, we live in democratic country, and B, the ruling party is not in our side right now. But what will happen is the ruling party and the opposing party will then have exchange and negotiation. So we stop doing our aggressive actions, and we will only stop because of the impacts that were given to us by the ruling party, such as we are being listened to, we are laws that are created and passed by the government are fair for either side of the party. They seem to not listen to any of our point here as closing government. Okay, they said that discussions, the CEO said that discussions is enough in status quo, but we have said that in status quo, it isn't enough. People are not being heard enough, and discussions won't actually happen without this aggressive approach, right? Because how are you going to make people have discussions with no new approach that will be looked by others? In the first place, you have no attraction, you have nothing interesting to ask the opposing party from the CO's emotion, right, in the CO's world. So how will you even attract people to talk and to have this discussion with? Okay, let's move on with and let me start with my clashes on why I don't like the opening government. Okay, the first thing is they failed to prove and explain democracy explicitly and why it's important to the case. Secondly, let's move on to the opening opposition's party. My clash will be who will have a better opposing party. Okay, they opened their case with the rebuttals towards OG's case of they said that they think it's not urgent for the opposing party to aggressively advocate, but then they explained it in a way where the whole existence of the opposing party defending what they want is not urgent and bad. The thing is, panel, this is not true, because when the opposing party has the intention of being listened to, at the very least in this scenario, it is urgent. What the opposing party citizens are going through in their day-to-day life is important. If in their rightly having so opinion, they think that the government or the people that are supposed to protect them and make sure that they have a good life in this country, that they think it's unfair or not benefiting them, the laws that have been passed, then it is very urgent for them to aggressively advocate. These are people's lives we are talking about. My teammate before have stated before that it's the overtone window that we are focusing on in this debate. They want to the negotiation. If they want something in this case, let's say they criticize a law backed up by the government and it's not benefiting them or being fair for them at all, they're allowed to do it aggressively. Why? A, to be listened to, and B, to get what they want. They will obviously criticize in a reasonable manner, panel, because they won't just say boo, it's bad. They will give their opinions. They will say why it's bad. They will express themselves why they think it's unfair. That may be radical and or aggressive the way they say it, but then that's where it comes to the overtone window comes, and the check and balance come. There's the opening opposition team stance is also very unclear, and we still don't understand solution or why what they're doing is good and will benefit our main actor, which is the opposing party. Second thing, moving on, CO's rebuttals against CG. they say that it is unhealthy competition and it will create chaos. And their solutions are discussions such as status quo that I've said before. First thing, in their side of the house, they will only have discussions like the status quo or whatever, right? While having a good image. First of all, how will they even do the discussions? Who will they do the discussions with? We need to realize that there are other actors, right? There are, let's say, the people who are part of the party. There are gray area people, and there are the opposing party, right? The thing is, discussions that will happen in their side of the house, the only discussions that are possible are the discussions from against the people who already agree with them, because they do not attract anyone. They do not attract the gray area people because they didn't change anything, and also they didn't attract the people that are from the other ruling party side of the house, right? So if you're not aggressive, the majority won't even acknowledge the existence of you. They just will do whatever they want. Also, they say that being aggressive is banishing the image of the opposing party and not a good matter, not a good attitude, and you will attract hate. First of all, if their only reasoning on why they don't like this is just to attract hate, then they will hate the whole politics system and everything, because that is basically where hate starts, because where you argue and where you defend your life and your opinions and your values in your day-to-day life. Why, even if we have hate in our side of the house, it is better.
Thank you for that speech. Now to close the whole debate, we call upon the opposition whip. You may start your speech. Op whip, no, you're not audible. Is opposition whip speak? Because there's no voice. Is it just me atau op whip gak ada suaranya? Same ya?
There's no voice at all.
Can you speak a bit longer? Oh, bukan ya? Okay, okay. All right, sure.
Hello, am I audible?
Nah, you're audible now. But could you like read the motion just to make sure, or like speak longer gitu?
Speech longer. Kayak apa, Kak? Kayak sekarang?
Nah, yeah, okay.
Udah jelas?
Yeah, it's already clear.
Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Well, Ma'am, sir, we know that we are living in a democratic country, which is we have to work in team together so that country can work well and we have a better and good countries like the other countries, right? And we know that in this kind of teamwork, we need a support from every party, right? I mean, like each party have to support each other, and we have to do that so that our democracy can be, can be work successfully, right? And but notice that in the case of government team, they just want to like crushing this kind of democratic country by giving the chance for oppositions party to do such aggressive action so that they can like forcing the ideology to the other party itself, right? And we see that this kind of aggressive that comes from government is only make a worse case, a worse situation in our democratic country itself, right? And now before that, I'm going to like giving you like summary how actually our debate now happened, and after that I'm going to like giving summary battle toward the closing of government team, and lastly I'm going to give my extensions toward my first speaker. So firstly, let's look how actually the debates. So opening governments agree that opposition party should like do this kind of aggressive approaches because they think that our government right now is not enough, because they think that government should actually counting the whole people, the whole voice of the people itself, right? But we see that in status quo right now, government already do that, right? Government already counting every people, right? Every voice of the people, right? Even if the opposition party itself, right? We know that the democracy itself have a meaning that we have to like count every voice of the people, and then in the end of and then we should like count which one is the majority voice of the people and which one is the minority voice of the people itself, right? And we know that in democracy itself, the last result of the democracy itself is the majority voice itself, right? Means that this kind of majority voice is have to be taken into actions, because most people need this, right? Because it is majority need, right? So that's why but even if it is majority needs, but in democracy we still the voice of the minority itself, the voice of the opposition party itself, it still be counted it to begin with, right? So that is why we think that government have already do that, right? And secondly, they also told us, opening government say to us that it is good to like giving this kind of aggressive approaches because it is a form of transparency in our government, right? But we see that this transparency is not make our democracy country become good. Rather, it's only make our democracy country become worse, right? Because of what? Because of this transparency, everybody cannot like support each other, right? Everybody cannot like go in a teamwork, right, to make our country to become better, right? And we see that because of this aggressive, everybody just like trying to competing each other to force their ideology itself, right? And we see there is no teamwork, so that we think that this transparency is only create chaos and make our country become worse. So that's we think that transparency in this case is not good enough to be implemented to begin with. And opening oppositions, we actually think that our case is much more better, because opening opposition never talk to you about how in a viewpoint of the opposition party, they only told you about how actually the government work, and how actually, I mean, like how actually this the vote, I mean, like the ruling, the one who have how actually the government have much more voter, and but they never told you that how actually it is, this aggressive is only is only bad for the opposition party itself, right? And my first speaker already told you that this aggressive action is only create I mean, like this kind it's only create bad impact for the opposition party, because it is just make opposition party become more oppressed, right? And I will give that in my extensions. And then comes to the closing government. Closing government told it is good to make this kind of aggressive, because it can attract many people. It can attract other people, so that people will see you and people will support you, right? But we see that this kind of attractive is, we see that it is not positive attractive, right? Because we see that it is only negative attractive, because but because we see like but before that, I'm gonna explain to you why actually we think that it is just only negative attractive, because we see that the opposition party and there is a ruling party. We know that we know that ruling party name as ruling, because people mostly choose them, right? People mostly agree with their good idea, right? So that means that many people vote them, right? Many people vote those ruling party, right? And means that they have more vote rather than opposition party itself, right? And we see that in this kind of, I mean, like to begin with, both opposition and ruling has already have different, I mean, different voter, right? Different voters. and and when this difference when because of this difference, when opposition party try to like try to forcing their idea to the like majority, the most majority people who already agree with the idea comes from ruling people, they already lose to begin with, right? Because many people have already agreed with the ruling party itself, right? And we see that instead of they are being attractive positively, we see that they only get negative attractive, right? People will most hate them, right? And people will most like put them down, right? Because their idea has already rejected to begin with, right? From the voter from the ruling party itself, right? And because of that, we believe that the positive attractives come from the closing government will never be going to be happening itself, right? And okay, I think that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that speech. That closed the debate. Give me around 15 to 20 minutes to assess the debate, and I'll be back with the ranking result and decision behind it. Cool. So All right, so CG is already here, just making a quick roll call, right? Is opening government here?
Here.
Okay, cool. Oh,
We are here.
okay. CO? Is CO here?
Yes, we are here.
Right, cool. Then I can start my OA. So wait, let me just set up my timer so that I didn't also go over time ago. Self. Okay. All right, I'm gonna start my OA in 3, 2, 1. All right, so thank you everyone for the debate. I think for the OA, I'll be dividing into 3 parts. Firstly, the general feedbacks to getting how does the debate went, perhaps what are the things that can be added. Secondly, ranking. Lastly, the reasoning behind that rank or like the reasoning behind that decision. So firstly, on the general feedback, right? I think the debate generally needs 4 things. Firstly, the debate needs more characterization. In the sense that because this motion, we're talking about several keywords that I get, and that is like A, major opposition, B, B, a functioning democracy, C, aggressive confrontational approach, and lastly, the ruling party itself. I think 4 of these keywords needs to be more characterized in every benches so that the debate develop more in a sense that it doesn't really stop on the ideas of, oh yeah, we'll lose followers, we'll gain followers, something along that line. So like giving more characterization on these 4 things would be good. Secondly, the debate needs more mechanization, right? Because sure, I got that several things are teams already provided, but like there is need to be a more step-by-step analysis and like generally an outcome that you wanted to reach in each team so that the debate doesn't necessarily get too blurry and got more ideas of where it's heading. So that's the second thing. And lastly, I think the debate needs more engagement in the sense that sure, you can elaborate your benefit, but you need to directly clash it with the trade-off that your opponent have already brought or like the harm that it might be causes so that it can be more clear in the sense of what kind of benefit you're changing and why is something necessarily better in comparison towards the trade-off. So that's like the 3 points of the general feedback that I want to give onto this debate. But like, what are the ranking then? My second part with ranking, first would go to closing government, second goes to opening government, third goes to closing opposition, and fourth goes to opening opposition. So now the reasoning behind it, right? I'm gonna start with the first, with the 4 themes, and that is like, why does opening opposition got 4? I think comparing towards the other team, all contribution are 2, right? Firstly, they list an idea of harm in a sense that criticizing the work will hinder the progress of the ruling of the countries and refutes the function of the government or the countries that is supposed to be improving, right? They bring an idea of how 2020 COVID case goes on in USA, and they also bring the second harm, and it is like losing more followers, right? Because if you only oppose, then this will be make them more opposed by the current ruling parties because you have like this major political parties that is ruling the countries, and you will lose the followers because you would be seen as indifferent or whatnot. And lastly, you would lose followers because of bad image that you're trying to create it. Then they propose a benefit, and it's like, well, status quo is enough because democracy is just democracy, and like focusing on how we should do things again rather than just not trying to become too aggressive, right? But this contribution has already rebutted by the government side of the house by saying that OG comes into debate and saying that this is not necessarily the main interest trying to cater towards the country progressivity, because what we should focus on is the major ruling parties and how it could gain the benefit itself. That's the first thing, already neutralizing the ideas of why this will hinder the parties, the countries. Secondly, they also brought the idea that it will only worsen democracy because of the lacking competition between parties. And lastly, CG said that there's no impact will be made because the major ruling parties would be stronger and here the progress, i.e. bad publication and less attractive for the parties, thus losing the followers that they wanted to champion. So that's the reason why then opening opposition got 4. Moving on, why does CO got 3rd then? Well, CO case is quite similar with OO. I think the tipping points went into a more elaboration of harms and benefit and clear mechanization of they wanted to bring towards the debate, right? Because what they try to champion is that a healthy competition or synergy in between parties, focusing on humbling down and focusing on their own ideas to contribute towards the country's democracy need, Well, secondly, they talk also about the democracy is already working, so it's better focus on contributing that is support rather than aggressively opposing it, in the sense that some people would still vote them if they contribute good enough without necessarily being more aggressive. But the problem with this is that most of their case, again, has been rebutted by the government side of the House, and the harms they propose still stand, especially on the closing government side, on the idea of directly pointing out that there's kind of a lack of mechanization in this one, in a sense that what kind of healthy confrontational approach that you wanted, and so like more detailed picturization, because what I only get is that they want to create synergy between parties, but needs to be explained the most. And then like secondly, the ruling parties will not be on your side of the house because there would be overshadowing towards the opposition parties that CEO tries to propose that, hey, democracy will work and people will just vote our own parties at the end. And then lastly, by saying that the discussion that is necessarily going is not enough because people will not going to, cater towards the new approach and will be overlooked by the other, i.e. in the sense that the discussion that CEO wanted to propose will not necessarily work by the people because it will most likely be supporting the major ruling parties. So I think those what is it called? Rebuttals have already neutralized the benefit and the harm still stands, hence CEO got third. But why do OG got second then at the end of the day? Because I think what OG wanted to as a goal is that they want to fix the democracy, like they wanted to fix the hole that exists in the government and making sure it's fixed, i.e. trying to improve the democracy that exists within the state itself. Well, their idea still stands, but it falls short on how they will and try to get the benefit in itself. Because what I get from them is that they wanted to gain more voter by catering towards minorities. Also bringing the ideas, trying to, better publication, but they necessarily needs to explain again what kind of publication that they wanted in order to cater towards this minority group so that they can be the one that vote towards this major opposition parties. Secondly, they also try to prove that peaceful approach will not be better, in a sense that the only way it works when you try to get aggressive, they try to bring evidence on how the LGBT rights movement in USA gain more rights in the moment that they try to be more vocal, but like there is still unclear benefit how when you try to be more aggressive, you would cater towards these people. And lastly, they bring an idea about transparency, which still falls short. Hence, at the end of the day, the analysis falls short on the idea of proving and how are they going to do in order to achieve the benefit regarding the above. So yeah, they got second, but their mainly still stands because there's lack of rebuttals that is quite sufficient coming from the opposition bench in order for you to tackle the claims that they wanted, i.e. becoming more vocal, trying to caters and be better publication for the minorities and etc. Right, so that's why OG got second. But then lastly, why do CG got first? Because I think they got first because mainly contribution is able to frame the debate as if why the opposing party's interest is exactly as it is, i.e. they explain that the ruling parties would be more overpowered if we are not voicing our concern from the majority opposition parties. And even when it's a democracy, there's still a favoritism towards the ruling party, which will hinder the progress of check and balances that exists. Exactly then filling out what OG has and wanted to bring onto this debate in regards of democracy improvement, and that is the favoritism harm that existed, right? And they also explained that what kind of aggressivity that they wanted, i.e. they wanted to create criticizing, but in a way that when they already got elected or like they already got the negotiation, they can tone it down a bit so that we're not going to lose that big of a followers as opposed to what opposition tried to propose towards the harms. But lastly, they wanted to focus on the overtone windows, and that is that they wanted to cater towards the people that they wanted, right? People that's necessarily supporting the opposition party to begin with by making more aggressive attempt at criticizing, created a better publication towards perhaps this gray area people that they say will try to appeal more towards this audience because they are voicing out their concern in comparison to just following what the major ruling party is, and that is done by being aggressive in a democracy. So I think all of those reasoning concluded my OA towards the debate. Again, to restate that the first goes to closing government, second goes to opening government, third goes to closing opposition, and fourth goes to opening opposition. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kak.
Thank you, Kak.
Oh,
everyone.
um,